Ladies and gentlemen, my name is László Károly. I'm the secretary of Governor Kossuth. I guess in your language, who is Kossuth. I was responsible for recording the happenings on that long journey to the United States of America from December 1851 to July 1852. This arduous, long speaking tour saw us crisscrossing New England, visiting many of the cities and settlements along the eastern seaboard, including Philadelphia and Baltimore, before we entered your great capital named for the founder of your republic, the city of Washington. The United States of that time, actually of our time, has about 25 million inhabitants. An overwhelming majority of them living in the states already a part of the Union and located east of the great Mississippi River. When Governor Kossuth realized that President Millard Fillmore was unmovable in his resolve to continue the isolationist policy of George Washington, he felt he had no choice but to take his case directly to the American people. Governor Kossuth's message was that a world half free and half subjugated could not long survive. He believed that the USA was God's chosen son, the one that would help democracy prevail in a world controlled by despots. His mission, his message to Americans, was that their destiny was to help Hungary achieve its independence. Governor Kossuth had the charisma and speaking ability to reach out to the American people. Your poet, Walt Whitman, described Kossuth's first encounter with American audiences. In New York City, over 200,000 New Yorkers came out to hear him. Whitman witnessed this as all that indescribable human roar and magnetism. Unlike any other sound in the universe, the glad, exulting thunder shouts of countless unloosed throats of men. This impact also had both short and long-term consequences for the culture, popular culture, of both Hungary and the United States. However, carrying his message to 25 million Americans was no easy task. Newspapers were the most important medium, combined with his powerful oratory. We traveled on roads and rivers, by horse-drawn carriages, canal boats, on horseback, and on the first railway links between Baltimore and Ohio. The distances and the primitive transportation were a weary and trying challenge. However, we made it as far west as St. Louis, Missouri, and then all the way south to New Orleans, by riverboat, more or less, on the Mississippi, stopping in places like Jackson, Mississippi, before turning again northward and visiting cities like Montgomery, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. It was a great adventure. But how, where, and why did it all begin?
Kossuth Lajos azt üzente, hogy nem elég a reglementje, ha még egyszer azt üzeni, már mindennek el kell menni. Kossuth Lajos
the United States was expanding ever westward across North America, extending from the Atlantic seaboard to the Mississippi River and beyond, extending its new constitutional government. A new Hungarian political revival was also taking place. This national revival was based on enlightenment, an assertion of national identity, and a desire for self-determination. During the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, the Hungarian Diet in Pozsony pushed for the increased use of the Hungarian language rather than Latin, and the expansion of Hungarian rights, calling into question the sovereignty of the Austrian Habsburgs over the interests and needs of the Hungarian population. This led to the discussion of national development and the extension of individual rights. Parallel to this political awakening, Hungarians began to pay close attention to the political experience of Americans. Some Hungarian leaders cited the American War of Independence as an inspiration. Hungarian scholar Sándor Völgyi Farkas traveled in the United States in 1831. In a book he published in 1832, he wrote about the great opportunities of the American economic and political system. He even translated the Declaration of Independence into Hungarian. He met President Andrew Jackson, observed the religious diversity of the land, and saw the commitment to public education. Although he painted a positive picture overall, he did see slavery as the Achilles heel of the land. Many Hungarians were influenced by him, and many more set out to see it for themselves, including Ágoston Haraszti and Károly Nagy. By this time, a young reformist group began to challenge the status quo in the Hungarian Diet. Already, Ferenc, Deák, and Lajos Kossuth were important leaders among the reformers. Kossuth edited the papers, the reports of the Diet, which provided the records of all the proceedings. The Habsburg government cracked down on the young reformers, and Kossuth was arrested and jailed in 1837. While he was incarcerated, Kossuth diligently studied English, as if preparing for his future exile trips to England and the United States. Political amnesty in 1840, after the Diet pushed through a decision on freedom of expression. A year later, Kossuth was already the editor of a new political journal, the Pesti Hírlap. This publication spearheaded reforms and called for social justice. By 1847, Kossuth was able to bring together an opposition party with the support of other young reformers. In March 1848, revolutionary fever swept through France and led to the fall of Louis Philippe. The revolutionary fever also reached the Habsburg lands, and Kossuth, as a member of the Diet, urged the opposition to send its demands to the Habsburg court in Vienna. The demands included a responsible and representative government and civil liberties for a defeudalized Hungary, as well as freedom of press and full equality before the law. On March 13th, the public demonstrations toppled Metternich's government in Vienna, and the disturbances spread to Pest and throughout the country by March 15th. On March 18th, Emperor Ferdinand agreed to the Diet demands. A new Hungarian cabinet was formed with Lajos Batthyány, Ferenc, dad, and Kossuth in important leadership positions. The Diet then passed the April Laws, which called for hereditary constitutional monarchy, a representative legislature, equality before the law, and elimination of serfdom. When this new government refused to support Vienna in a potential war with Frankfurt, the Habsburg government announced that the April Laws were null and void. The emperor then sent the loyal Croatian army under Jožef Jelačić against the Hungarians.
Megtanultak tótul, svábul, kukorica, gombócából, ha még többet ettem volna, németül is tudtam volna. Megállj német, majd megbánod, hogy a magyart mindig bántod. Őrödből csinálok dudát, azon fújom ezt a nótát. Elindult már Kossuth is, véle a regement is, megismerni messziről, darutollas kalapja tetejéről. Megismerni messziről, darutollas kalapja tetejéről. Kossuth Lajos az anyja, keservesen siratja. Ne sírjon, édesanyám, szép Magyarországét magam megvívnám. Ne sírjon, édesanyám, szép Magyarországét magam megvívnám.
Although the Hungarians defeated Jelačić at Pákozs on September 29th, this was the beginning of the Habsburg policy of divide and rule, by playing the nationalities in historic Hungary against the Magyars. In response, the Hungarian legislature created a National Defense Committee, led by Kossuth. The revolutionary forces had many initial successes. However, by January 1849, they had to evacuate Pest-Buda and move to Debrecen, taking St. Stephen's crown with them. On April 14th, Hungary declared its independence from the empire and dethroned the Habsburg ruler. The parliament at this time elected Kossuth as president of Hungary. In desperation, the Habsburg ruler appealed to the Russian Tsar for military assistance. The Tsar, fearing for the stability of his own empire, sent 200,000 Russian troops into Hungary. Outnumbered and attacked from all directions, the days of Hungarian independence were numbered.
Esik eső karikára, Kossuth Lajos kalapjára, valahány csepp esik rája, annyi áldás szálljon rája, de valahány csepp esik rája, annyi áldás szálljon rája. Esik eső karikára, az ellenség kalapjára, de valahány csepp esik rája, annyi ménkű szálljon rája, de valahány csepp esik rája, annyi ménkű szálljon rája.
Many Americans were sympathetic towards Hungary's revolt. On hearing of Russian-Austrian monarchist alliance against Hungary, the young congressional representative from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln, authored a resolution of sympathy with the cause of Hungarian freedom on September 12th in 1849, in which he condemned the collusion between the Habsburgs and the Russian Tsar. Although this came too late to change the facts on the ground, it did reflect widespread American sentiments. It came too late because Austrian and Russian forces defeated the Hungarians in the Battle of Temesvar on August 9th, and the Hungarian forces finally surrendered at Világos on August 13th, a month before the above-mentioned Lincoln Resolution. The leaders of Hungary's defeated independence now faced execution, prison, and exile. Kossuth and his many associates fled to the Ottoman Turkish Empire. While Russia and Austria demanded their extradition, the Ottoman Sultan placed them under house arrest. But the harsh repression carried out by Julius von Hainu military administration in Hungary sparked a negative reaction in the United States. Many questioned whether enough had been done by President Zachary Taylor. In 1850, Congress authorized President Millard Fillmore, by a vote of 123 to 54, to have Secretary of State Daniel Webster instruct the American Embassy in Istanbul to negotiate Kossuth's departure from Turkey. The U.S. warship Mississippi took him on board on September 7, 1851.
El kell menni háborúba, ha úgy vagyunk cédulázva, hogy elvesztek a csatába. Szép meghalni a hazáért, virtus tenni a nemzetért, felkelni a szabadságért, ontani a jó magyar vért. Azt is tudom, nem én kezdtem, tudom, hogy nem én végeztem. Most is halnak és születnek, nem lesz vége az életnek.
Kossuth's liberation from Ottoman Turkish house arrest via American intervention led to great jubilation in all parts of the democratic and inspired world. Kossuth took a detour from Gibraltar to London before sailing to the United States on board the Humboldt, which brought him to Staten Island, New York on December 5, 1851. The celebrations of Kossuth had not yet died down in London when the American press began to debate as to which political party could really claim Kossuth as its guest. Would it be the Whigs or the Democrats who would have the right to give direction to Kossuth regarding the domestic politics of the United States? The Whigs claimed credit for freeing Kossuth from Turkish incarceration, but the press coverage from England dampened their enthusiasm. According to these press reports, Kossuth did not intend to be simply a guest, but was planning a political tour of the USA, appealing for the support of Hungarian independence. The Democrats, on the other hand, did not feel constrained in supporting Kossuth's appeal for popular sovereignty and self-government, including a foreign policy in support of establishing democratic political systems throughout Europe. The appeals of the two major parties were outbid by the abolitionists, with their pronouncements that they intend to win Kossuth's support for their anti-slavery campaign. They were already well represented in Congress by 1851, as well as in the legislatures of many northern states on the radical fringe of both major parties. A third party also adopted the program of the abolitionists. They were the Free Soilers, who demanded freedom of speech, work, and enterprise, as well as the maximum opportunity for individual liberty. This numerically small party could add its weight to the radical wing of either major party in support of Kossuth. While Kossuth was in England, he was overwhelmed with letters from anti-slavery organizations and individuals. James Houghton, an Irish abolitionist activist, warned him not to go to the United States because the pro-slavery forces would ensnare him and he would lose the support of his real friends, his commitment to freedom, and his own essence. His tombstone will simply read, "Here lies Kossuth, the American slave owner." This aggressive campaign convinced Kossuth to avoid taking sides in his public pronouncements. He realized that if he joined in the abolitionist crusade, he would automatically lose the support of the American government, which at this time was still committed to slavery.
Tomorrow, I set my foot to the American soil. My correspondence with Americans convinces me that there are many who will be receptive for my message. The message of independence for Hungary, unity of democratic forces, and commitments to further the interest of my downtrodden nation. Yet, I am uncertain about how my message will be received in America. Since Americans are presently so divided on the question of slavery. The official stance of the government in Washington is to straddle the fence of this divisible issue. My conscience, in good faith, does not allow to do the same. However, I cannot jeopardize my mission. I cannot jeopardize my mission by alienating either the supporters of the pro-slavery movements, either the government. Thus, I have only one option. And this option is that I must stay on message and avoid any debate about the political parties. I will do this by stressing that if I believe the sovereign right of Hungary to chart their own course, I have no right to tell Americans how to chart their own course.
For the sake of the Hungarian interests, he must avoid the hornet's nest in American politics. Once on shore at Castle Garden in New York City, just hours after his arrival, Kossuth said,
"It's both my ethical and my moral conviction that I should not become involved in political party debates. If I demand the right to self-government for my own homeland, then I must be consistent and stand for non-interference in the internal affairs of others and respect this in American context as well."
Of course, this statement did not satisfy the intransigent abolitionists. In the Boston Liberator, William Wood Garrison immediately declared that this statement by Kossuth makes him unacceptable as an ally against slavery. The more moderate abolitionists, however, were satisfied that his statement would ensure that he would not become a spokesman of the slave interests. A delegation of Democrats who visited Kossuth after his New York speech approved his reservations on speaking out on the question of slavery and accepted his commitment that the USA should simply stand for the self-government of all peoples. The Whigs could not remain out of the debate, however. They simply lauded their past performance on the Hungarian question. This posturing left Kossuth with the impression that the Whigs were reminding him of the debt he owed them for his release from Turkish house arrest. Yet at this time, the filibuster in the Senate by some of the Whigs was the very reason why it was not yet possible to know whether a formal invitation would be forthcoming to Washington from the federal government. Kossuth at the time was not aware that the Austrian Habsburg interests were represented in Washington by their agent Hulisman, who was doing his level best to discredit Kossuth and to keep the U.S. government from receiving him in any capacity. Hulisman was successful with the conservative Whigs and Southern slave-owning interests to such an extent that a filibuster was carried out in the Senate against formally receiving Kossuth in Congress. The filibuster debates were instructive. Senator Dawson from Georgia fired the first salvo. "I do not find anything in Kossuth's character that would warrant us to show him more recognition than we have bestowed on other foreign visitors. If the mass public wants to honor him, so be it. But this is not the government's or the legislature's responsibility." Senator Foote, the originator of the motion to invite Kossuth, responded, "Considering the widespread popularity and respect the deep wonder and general gratitude that has been expressed on both continents towards Kossuth, I could not fathom that in this body there would be a rational senator who would not see the difference between Kossuth and others. Of George Washington, there is only one, but of Kossuth, there only is also one. All enlightened-minded men will judge so. The opponents of Kossuth, however, kept up the filibuster. General Cass sarcastically addressed the filibusterers with, "I have never witnessed such a travesty that the Whig government's own resolution faces a filibuster from its own party members, while we in the opposition, we Democrats, at least on the Kossuth question, have adopted the governing party's position." However, the fine speeches notwithstanding, the news from the New York celebrations of Kossuth tended to support the filibusterers. Since Kossuth had been the editor of Pesti Hírlap, News from Pest, prior to the revolution, a major banquet was organized for him by the New York area newspapers. The banquet was dominated by the New York Tribune, the New York Times, and the Evening Post, all abolitionist papers. This meant that the filibusterers saw the banquet as a confirmation of Kossuth's abolitionist commitment in spite of his protestations. This perception was reinforced by the official abolitionist newspaper, the National Era of Washington, D.C. This paper provided the filibusterers with ammunition in its glorifying articles of Kossuth, followed on the same page by Mrs. Beecher Stowe's famous series on Uncle Tom's Cabin, which issue by issue revealed the horrors of the slavery institution.
Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away, there's where my heart is turning ever, that's where the old folks stay. All alone is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brothers, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. All up and down the old creation, sadly I roam. All around is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brothers, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. When will I see the bees a-humming all round the comb? When will I hear the banjo tumming down in my good old home? All the world is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brothers, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home.
After this series of events, when Kossuth arrived in Washington on December 30th, 1851, the filibuster was still in high gear, and suspicion around Kossuth's intentions. Although most representatives were still in awe towards his person, speaking ability, and charisma, most shied away from him for fear of being targeted by the press. Only the anti-slavery camp stood by him at this time. What could abolitionist-tainted Kossuth then expect from the President of the Republic, Millard Fillmore, from 1850 to 1853, who was personally a large landowner and an owner of many slaves? Democratic Senator Shields described their meeting to Carl Schurz in the following way. Fillmore received Kossuth as a captain would meet sailor cadets on the deck of his ship. He stood at stiff attention, with which he tried to project decorum and dignity, but lacked any refinement. And his verbal responses to Kossuth had an awkward effect. It would have been less offensive if it had been communicated in a written text. Kossuth was definitely not satisfied with his encounter with Fillmore, nor was he pacified by the state dinner for which he received the President's invitation. As it turned out, President Fillmore also invited the famous French physicist Ampère to share the limelight with Kossuth, thereby diminishing the dinner's significance as an American demonstration for the cause symbolized by Kossuth. Suspicion increased regarding Kossuth's motives when the abolitionists used the occasion of the congressional banquet as an opportunity to attack the Fillmore administration. To the last moment, even Daniel Webster hesitated to attend this event so that he would not be compromised in the celebration surrounding Kossuth. But he attended the banquet, and against his previous reserve, he delivered a powerful speech in support of Hungarian independence. Among other things, Webster said that, "We shall rejoice to see our American model upon the lower Danube and on the mountains of Hungary. That first prayer shall be that Hungary may become independent of all foreign power. I limit my aspirations for Hungary for the present to that single and simple point: Hungarian independence, Hungarian self-government, and Hungarian control of Hungarian destinies." The Secretary of State's speech was followed by diplomatic protests, as well as a conservative reaction in the administration. Webster had to backtrack on his statement. He said that he was expressing his personal perspective and not the government's position. Nonetheless, press attacks continued, and his Hungarian-friendly speech led to confrontation with President Fillmore. Whatever the case may be, the happenings at the congressional banquet led many leaders in Washington to distance themselves from Kossuth. The Andrew Jackson Memorial Banquet in Washington, which was a major social and political happening, also reflected this. The more radical Democrats had invited Kossuth to this event, with the consequence that active and prominent politicians claiming illness and stayed away from the event. Only General Sam Houston, the senator from Texas, felt confident enough to attend. However, even in this case, when the time arrived to greet the honored guest, Houston suddenly claimed illness and departed from his turn before his turn arrived to welcome Kossuth. The irony of the situation was that many of these same public figures made personal visits to Kossuth's residence to greet him privately, far from the attention of the press. Kossuth was greatly disappointed by his Washington reception, but his will was not deterred to continue his mission. Kossuth had said yet in Boston,
"By one side, I am accused of being in the hand of the abolitionists. In the other side, I am a follower of slave owners. After this, I am really uncertain as to what behavior I am supposed to follow in your free land. Fortunately, these conflicting claims and accusations give me the satisfaction of knowing that the direction I am following is correct. And this is my responsibility in the future. And this direction of the idea of an independent Hungary, whose resurrection I will continue to preach to all who are willing to listen."
And preach he did, with great skill as a communicator. His charm and sincerity was such that he entranced men, women, and children of all ages. School children promised to donate their savings for the liberation of Hungary. Random visitors donated their rings and jewelry to support the oppressed Hungarian people. One lady wrote in and said that she had neither gold nor silver, but she had a son who is more precious to me than anything in this world, and I will donate his arms to the liberation of Hungary. And on came the manifestation of the enthusiasm that he generated in the American mass public. His success in generating this kind of sympathy made him unwilling to accept the cold shoulder he received on the official level in Washington, D.C. As Kossuth said in Cincinnati, Ohio,
if millions become organized as a friend of Hungarian liberty, then in the face of such a mass movement, even Washington cannot remain unmoved by these feelings generated in the people.
And the most impressive encounter with the American scene was his address delivered to the state legislature in Columbus, Ohio on February 6, 1852.
Mr. President, the General Assembly of Ohio, having magnanimously bestowed upon me the high honor of the national welcome, it is with profound veneration that I beg leave to express my fervent gratitude for it. Applying the touchstone of philosophical scrutiny to that instruction which history affords, we cannot fail to remark that almost every century has one predominant idea which all absorbingly reveals and imposes a common direction on the activity of nations. This predominant idea is the spirit of the age. Invisible yet omnipresent. Impregnable yet all-pervading. Scorned, abused, opposed, and yet omnipresent. The spirit of our age is democracy. All for the people and all by the people. Nothing about the people and before the people. That is democracy. And that is the ruling tendency of the spirit of our age. To this spirit is opposed the principle of despotism, claiming sovereignty over mankind and degrading the nations from a position of self-consciousness and self-confidence to a condition of tools, subservient to authority of ambition. One of these principles will and must prevail. So far as one civilization prevails, the destiny of mankind is linked to a common science of principles, and within the boundaries of common civilizations, community of destiny exists. Two opposite principles cannot rule within the same boundaries: democracy or despotism. There is no transactions between the heaven and the hell. In the conflict of these two hostile principles, until now, it was not the right, not the justice, but only success, which met approbation and applause. Senators and representatives of Ohio, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the representatives of people of Ohio. Besides, in honoring me, you have approved what my nation has done. You have honored my nation by this. The approbation of my nation and myself reflects the sympathy of your generous people. And it is not idle thing, that sympathy of the people of Ohio. It weighs heavily, like a sovereign will of 2 million free men, powerful like a giant in his strongest youth. You have added to it the sanction of your authority, your people's sympathy. You have framed it into law, signed and done in all consequences, upon which humanity may rely, because you have registered it. There is other triumph of republican principle in this. Your faith. It is as if you had to say, ye, despot, who call yourself sovereign and proclaim your arbitrary whim to be the law of humanity. We, in our legitimate authority, not derived from vainglorious violence like yours, but from only one legitimate source of our authorities, the sovereign people's will. We declare before God and the world that nowhere is justice and right where you present it to be. We approve what ye blame, we honor what ye hate, and defy your ambitious arrogance to dictate what shall be law and right for nations and for humanity. But so high is the value of noble approbation. I am honored. It became an invaluable benefit for all humanity by those resolutions by which the General Assembly of Ohio, acknowledging the justice of those principles, which it is my mission to plead in my downtrodden country's name, declares the mighty and flourishing Commonwealth of Ohio resolved to restore the eternal laws of nations to their dues while too long condemned by arbitrary violence. It was indeed a sorrowful sight to see my nation bleed, and how freedom vanished between the iron grasp of despot, allied for universal oppression of humanity. It was a sorrowful sight to see that there is no power on the earth ready to defend those eternal laws, without which there is no security for water nation on the earth. It was sorrowful sight to see all nations just isolating themselves in the defense, while despots were allied in offense. The view had not changed. A bright light spreading over the dark sky of humanity. The glorious galaxy of the United States rises with imposing brightness over the horizon of oppressed nations. The time draws near when the virtue of your unparalleled support for rights and freedom with your sister states will help liberate Europe's nations. And together, those nations will unite in a mighty choir of Alleluia, thanking God that His parental choice is raised the United States to the glorious position of the firstborn son of freedom on the whole earth. George Washington prophesied that within 20 years, the Republic of the United States will be strong enough to defy any power on the earth in just cause. The state of Ohio was yet unborn at that time when the wisest and the purest of patriots made this prophecy. And God, the Almighty, made this prophecy come true. There is destiny in this. And you are conscious of this destiny. The star-spangled banner of America will rise above the new Sinai, the mountain of law for all nations. The people of the United States are made powerful by their freedom. Their commitment to the common rights of humanity provide the new Moses upon the new Sinai and shouts with the thundering voice of 25 million. Hear, you despot of the world. Henceforward this shall be the new law. In the name of the Lord, your God and our God. Ye shall not kill nations. Ye shall not steal their freedom. And ye shall not covet what your neighbors have. Hungary is a Golgotha, where my people is nailed to the cross. That America may proclaim the law, so she be the prophet of the humanity. That the cross is not the emblem of the death, but this is a sign of hope and the resurrection. Because my nation will rise, called the resurrection by eternal principles of the law of nature and of nature of God, which you proclaim, and your magnanimity will enable to become the cornerstone of national independence on the European continent. Also, we share two remarkable coincidences. First, the state of Ohio and myself, we have the same age. The very year when your constitution was framed was the year when I was born. My breast has always heaved with intense interest in the name of Ohio. It was if something of supreme importance lay hidden for me in the name to which my future was bound by the very year of my nativity. This day, my emancipation has been realized. And the second coincidence is that the tidings of present days will just reach Washington City when the senators of the United States sit down in a judgment about the question of international law and pronounce about your country's foreign policy. Ohio has given its vote to this resolution. I had honor to hear. And Ohio is one of the brightest stars of the Union. Ohio's vote is the vote of 2 million. It will have its constitutional weight in the councils, where the delegates of people's sovereignty find their glory in doing the people's will. So, it will be a day of consolation and joy in Hungary. My bleeding nation needs these resolutions, which you have just endorsed and which I will send them. They will spread like the lightning over the gloomy land. And my nation, unbroken in courage, steady in resolution, firm in confidence, will draw still more courage, more resolution, more confidence from them. Because it is well aware that the legislature of Ohio would never pledge a word of which it were not sure that the people of Ohio will, in case of need, as good as their word. So, I do believe that my nation forever and I for all my life will cherish the memory of this benefit with everlasting gratitude. Thank you, Ohio. Köszönöm nektek, Ohio.
Kossuth believed this to the end, but the practical prose of American politics was not reconcilable with the poetry of mass feelings. At the end of Kossuth's grand tour of agitation throughout the land, the interest of political politics, the prose of the practical world won over the enthusiastic emotional commitments of the masses for the democratization of Europe.
I am overwhelmed by mixed feelings at the end of this grand tour here in the United States. My high hopes have definitely not have been realized. Perhaps because I was expecting too much. For me personally, this was an exceptionally rewarding experience. Since I have met so many wonderful people in this country, and I have been welcomed in so many interesting towns and settlements, I have also seen so much of this vast and beautiful country, from the snug villages of New England to the big cities of Eastern Coast and heartland cities of Ohio. I have been able to see much of that Bernie Farkas and Alexis de Tocqueville described before. Looking in the future of this country, I can say that the United States has a big potential in the future. If it can come to grips with the cancer of slavery and find a cure, its future and greatness of this country is guaranteed. There may be a time when the great despotism of Europe and Asia will learn to fear its commitments to spread the blessing of liberty to all corners of the world. For my own people, for my own nation, this quest comes too late. But not everything is lost yet. Stories in Italy hold some promises. The important thing is to remember that it is to strive and struggle and never give up, even in the face of seemingly hopeless odds. Farewell, America. God be with you, and God be with us. Isten legyen veletek, Amerika.